So, you're stuck mixing vocals to a 2-track beat. You can't get the vocals to sit inside the mix exactly how you want it. It feels like the vocals are always sitting above the beat or they're getting drowned out. Crazy enough, my first #1 Billboard album, KIRK by DaBaby, was almost all 2-track mixes. So let's go ahead and dive into Pro Tools and I'll go over my 2 favorite ways to do this. So we have our beat. This one has a little bit of transient response. Sometimes when you look at them, they look like a sausage. They're 2 tracks. We really don't have a lot of control. I would first try to pull as much as we can out of the 2-track. It'll save you money and it'll save you time.
Nice.
My first option would be a transient shaper. My go-to is the iZotope Neutron 4 transient shaper. If you don't have iZotope and you don't have Neutron 4, you can achieve this with Slate transient shaper that's in the Slate bundle. Another great option, if you only have single band transient shapers, is to use the Clevgrand Gaffle. Now, why do I like this for specifically 2 tracks? One, it's multi-band. If we use something like a general transient shaper, it's going to affect each frequency range, lows, low mid, mids, highs. It's gonna affect all those the same. So you maybe have a kick drum that sounds good, but it's the snare that's lacking, or the hi-hats are too low. With a multi-band transient shaper, it gives us the ability to pinpoint where we wanna raise the transients as opposed to just the transients in general. When we open it up, it's just showing us one single band. We have the option to increase the attack, sustain, and then we can make it precise, balance, or loose. Let's at least listen to it first. Right now it's peaking at like a -0.2, right? That's too loud. If we're talking about mixing a vocal against that or even recording a vocal against that, we need to bring that down. A typical rule of thumb when we're dealing with the 2-track is about 10 dB. Of course, this is not canon. It all depends on the actual volume of the beat, where it's peaking at. Let's bring that down. I'll bring it down maybe 6-7 dB here from the clip gain. Another thing we can see is if we look at this analyzer right here, they're all squared off, right? That means that basically this instrumental was squashed into the limiter. Sometimes that can take away some of the punch. We can actually add some more attack back into those transients, and that's what we're gonna do with the shaper. The ultimate goal is to create more depth so that the vocals have a place to sit. The initial attack on the drums or on the instruments that have more transient information, right? So the initial hit of the sound, if we can over-exaggerate those, we now can make a spot right where we were trying to fit the vocals into this little spot. Now we have a space like this where we can fit the vocals in more like that. And so the beat becomes more punchy and sits around the vocals as opposed to less punchy and the vocals have to sit just on top. So I'm having a problem, Jordan. It's not, the plugin's not working. All right, after 6 years of troubleshooting, we're back into it. So as a whole, I'm going to just turn the attack up, right? So as if we were using something like Smack Attack. There started to be like these weird jump outs. If we're doing it all together on a 2-track, it's going to be brought out at times that maybe we don't want it. So let's look and see what happens when we actually split this into bands. We'll focus on the lower band. We will try to just get a little more oomph out of the kick. All right. So I have it right here at about 100 hertz, 98 hertz. There is some information the higher up you go, like in the snare. So maybe we don't want the snare to jump out as much. So we need to be really conscious of where this crossover point is at for these first bands. This is without it. I feel like we could get some more top end information, but the mid-range is okay. Let's see what it will sound like if we bring the snare up. So one of the main issues when I added this middle band is that it's going a little bit lower than I want it to. I like how the kick sounds, I like how the top end sounds, but that frequency range from about 100 hertz to about 250, I don't want the transients to be exaggerated in that. So I'm going to back off this one, leave it alone. I'm going to create another instance of it, right? So copy the plugin down, make it a factory default, back to the factory settings, and I'm going to try to find the band that I want for just the snare. We'll say about 300, and then we'll stop it off at about 1,000. Still wasn't quite giving me what I wanted, but it gave me enough to where there was just a little bit of a boost in it. And then I took some of the wetness out of it. So the overall processing out, it put it in a place where I felt a little more comfortable. Because we are increasing the transients a good bit to try to get this depth, we may be going against the ceiling. So we got to make sure that we're kind of bringing that back down to a normal place. I really like to have at least 5 dB of headroom. So I'm going to pull this back. So something in there, and now we have way more depth. If you've kind of mixed your vocal and now you're going back on something you've already worked on, you're gonna have to go back and readjust this. So the main thing that I listen for once I do this is the vocal bounce typically against the snare. They need to be pretty even. Like that's gonna give you the sense of, is this song about the beat or is this song about the artist? That's would be the first way that I would approach it. The next way is a little bit more advanced, but also equally effective, side chaining. Okay, so I hope you're enjoying this training, but I did want to let you know, if you would like to learn my entire A to Z mix process, we've just recently released my mixing course. Here, I reveal my secrets behind how I mix The Baby, Juice WRLD, and N-Well. And as a bonus, I've also broke down how I mix Bop by The Baby using just a 2-track beat. So if you really want to learn more, we've linked that down in the description. But let's jump back into the training. So what I really like to use is the FabFilter Pro Q3. The reason why I like the Pro Q3 is because it's so flexible, right? So we can do mid, side, and don't get freaked out when I start talking about mid-side. We have a midfield and we have a stereo field, right? I basically just want to focus on what's going on in the midfield because that's where that lead vocal is. I just want to give it a little bit more space. We're leaving the things on the side because they still need to support that vocal. You can change the analyzer settings here to show you whatever you want. I kind of like pre and post, and we'll put it on sidechain as well. Now, if I want to make more room for the vocals, one thing I can do is find the spot where vocals typically have the most energy, right? So the 1K, maybe 800 hertz to maybe 3K, right? So that's really like a vocal presence range. We really like it around 1K, 1.5K.
Kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the player to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front. I ain't never like consignment, but they wait in the front.
Yes, we got more vocal clarity, but we lost energy. So another option here is instead of going to stereo, we can do just the midfield and see how that feels.
Kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the player to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front. I ain't never like consignment, but they wait in the front.
It's feeling a little more cohesive.
Yeah, boy.
The problem is when the artist isn't rapping, it's gonna always be that way, right? So we're gonna always dip. So it's making us dip when we don't always need it. What I'm going to do is I am going to sidechain when the EQ should work. I know this is a very complex thing, or it feels that way, but I'm gonna keep it super simple for you. We just need to send the signal to the dynamic EQ just to tell it how to react, right? So we're not sending anything that's gonna make any noise. It's just telling it when it needs to go. It's basically whenever the vocals are going, this dynamic EQ is going to start to dip, and we'll see it. So we need to find a bus that's not being used. So I'll go down here and we'll say bus 71. I'll rename it sidechain SC. On here, let's change this to our sidechain. Bus 71 SC. And so now what's going to happen, the vocal signal coming in is going to feed the dynamic EQ once we set it to dynamic mode. So here, I need to put it at unity gain, right? So at 0 on here. Another thing that you should probably do, set it on pre-fader send. If you do it as a pre-fader send, so right here, what it will do is it will allow that signal to remain the same no matter what you do after the fader because it's sending the signal before it hits the fader. So if you're using any type of dynamic EQ or sidechaining compression, you need to make sure that you have it on pre-fader send. This part of the Pro Q3 is where we can set our dynamic EQ. So how much is it gonna go? The only other thing that we have to do is where it says auto, we need to click this little button right here. And that tells us to use the external sidechain. We need to make sure that this is also set on the correct one. It should be SC. All right, boom. So now we'll see that this is triggered by the vocals and not by the beat.
Kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the play to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front. I ain't never like consignment, but they wait in the front.
And so now what happens is when the artist isn't rapping or singing or talking, the beat is unaffected. And one thing I like to do, even though I'm dipping the mid here, I like to sometimes boost the side too. So we can boost it up around the vocal. It just depends on how it sounds, but I'll give you an idea of what I listen for.
Kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the play to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front. I ain't never like consignment, but they wait in the front. Cause they see me on 2 trips to 7, 8 in a month. The J kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the play to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front. I ain't never like consignment, but they wait in the front. Cause they see me on 2 trips to 7, 8 in a month. The J kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the play to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front.
And then this is without it.
Kicks for 10 years if it was 70 months. I told the play to not be playing, dog, be waiting in front. I ain't never like consignment, but they wait in the front.
It's subtle, right? It's not drastic, change everything, because we don't really want to lose the vibe of the beat. We like the beat. But what happens is you feel the sides lift a little bit, they support the vocals, and then the space for the vocals comes around just a little bit better than if we're doing it by ourselves. You know, I really try not to overthink while I'm mixing 2 tracks. It's going to be something that comes up a lot, and especially as we move forward in the industry. And I've used these techniques on multi-platinum records, Billboard #1 albums. The entire Baby album, the KIRK album, except for maybe one song, was entirely 2 tracks. This is what I did. So if you like this tutorial, you want to check out more tutorials from Grammy-nominated, Grammy-winning, multi-platinum engineers, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, and we'll keep the free content coming.